And now the shooting began, the captains first taking stand and speeding their shafts, and then making room for the men who shot each in turn after them. 280 staff were shot in all, and so deftly were they set that when the shooting was done, each target looked like the back of a hedgehog when the farm dog snuffs at it. A long time was taken in this shooting, and when it all was over, the judges came forward, looking carefully at the targets, and proclaimed in a loud voice which 3 had shot the best from the separate bands. Then a great hubbub of voices aroused each man among the crowd that looked on, calling for his favorite archer. Then 10 fresh targets were brought forward, and every sound was hushed as the archers took their place once more. This time the shooting was more speedily done, for only 9 staff were shot by each band. Not an arrow missed the target, but in that of Gilbert of the White Hand 5 arrows were in the small white spot that marked the centre. Of these 5, 3 were sped by Gilbert. Then the judges came forward again, and looking at the targets, called aloud the name of the archer that chosen as the best bowman of each band. Of these, Gilbert of the White Hand led, for 6 of the 10 arrows he had shot had lodged in the centre, but stout Tempest and young Clifton trod close upon his heels, yet the others stood a fair chance for the 2nd or 3rd place. And now, amid the roaring of the crowd, those 10 stout fellows that were left went back to their tents to rest for a while and change their bowstrings, for nought must fail at this next round, and no hand must tremble or eye grow dim because of weariness. Then, while the deep bass and hum of talking sounded all around like the noise of the wind in the leafy forest, Queen Eleanor turned to the king, and quoth she, "Thinkest thou that these yeomen so chosen are the very best in all merry England?" "Yea, truly," said the king, smiling, for he was well pleased with the sport that he had seen. "And I tell thee that not only are they the best archers in all merry England, but in all the wide world beside." "But what would thou say," quoth Queen Eleanor, "if I were to find 3 archers to match the best 3 yeomen of all thy guard?" "I would say that thou hast done what I could do not," said the king, laughing. "For I tell thee that these lives not in all the world 3 archers to match Tempest and Gilbert and Clifton of Buckinghamshire." "Now," said the queen, "I know of 3 yeomen. In all truth, I have seen them not long since, that would not fear to match against any thee, 3 that thou canst chosen from among all thy 40 archers, and moreover I will match them here this very day. But I will only match them with thy archers, providing that thou wilt grant a free pardon to all that may come in my behalf." At this the king laughed loud and long. "Truly," said he, "thou art taking up with strange matters for a queen. If thou wilt bring these 3 fellows that thou spakest of, I will promise faithfully to give them free pardon for 40 days, to come or to go, wherever so they please. Nor will I harm a hair of their heads in all that time. Moreover, is there that thou bringest shoot better than my yeomen, man for man. They shall have the prize for themselves according to their shooting. But as thou hast to take up of a sudden with sports of this kind, hast thou a mind or for a wager? Why, in sooth, said Queen Eleanor, laughing, I know not of such matters. But if thou hast a mind to do somewhat in that way, I will strive to please thee. What wilt thou wage upon thy man? Then the merry king laughed again, for he dearly loved goodly yeast. So he said amidst his laughter, I will wage thee 10 thus of Rhenish wine, 10 thus of the stoutest ale, and 10 score bows of temperate Spanish yew, with quivers and arrows to match. All that stood around smiled at this, for it seemed a merry wager for a king to give to a queen. But Queen Eleanor bowed her head quietly. I will take thy wager, she said, for I know right well where to place those things that thou hast spoken of. Now who will be on my side in this matter? And she looked around upon them that stood about, but no one spake or cared to wager upon the queen's side against such archers as Tempest and Gilbert and Clifton. Then the queen spoke again. Now who wilt back me in this wager? Wilt thou, my lord bishop of Hereford? Nay, quoth the bishop hastily, it is ill benefit one of my cloth to deal in such matters. Moreover, there are no such archers as his majesty's in all the world. Therefore I would but lose my money. Methinkest thou of thy gold wear thief more heavily with thee than the wrong or to thy cloth, said the queen, smiling. At this a ripple of laughter went around, for everyone knew how fond the bishop was of his money. Then the queen turned to a knight who stood near, whose name was Sir Robert Lee. Wilt thou back me in this manner? Said she. Thou art surely rich enough to risk so much for the sake of a lady. To pleasure my queen I will do it, said Sir Robert Lee. But for the sake of no other in the whole world I wager a groat, for no man can stand against Tempest and Gilbert and Clifton. Then turning to the king, Queen Eleanor said, I want no such aid as Sir Robert giveth me, but against thy wine and beer and stouter bows of ye I wager this griddle all set with jewels firm around my waist, and surely that it is worth more than thine. Now I take thy wager, quoth the king. Send for thy archers straight away, but here come forth the others. Set them shoot, and then I will match those that win against all the world. So be it, said the queen. Thereupon, beckoning the young Richard Partington, she whispered something in his ear, and straightway the page bowed and left the place, crossing the meadow to the other side of the range, where he was pleasantly lost in the crowd. At this all the stout that stood around whispered to one another, wondering what it all meant, and what the 3 men the queen was about to set against those famous archers of the king's guard. And now the 10 archers of king's guard took their stand again, and all the greatest crowd was hushed to the stillness of death. Slowly and carefully each man shot his staff, and so deep that the silence that could hear every arrow rap against the target as it struck it. Then, when last staff had sped, a great roar went up, and the shooting, I wot, was well worthy of the sound. Once again Gilbert had lodged 3 arrows in the white. Tempest came second, with 2 in the white, and 1 in the black ring next to it. But stout Clifton had gone down, and Hubert of Suffolk had taken the 3rd place, for, while both of these 2 good yeomen had lodged 2 in the white, Clifton had lost 1 shot upon the 4th ring, and Hubert came in with 1 in the 3rd. All the archers around Gilbert's booth shouted for joy till their throats were hoarse, tossing their caps aloft and shaking hands with one another. In the midst of all the noise, Hubbard 5 men came walking across the lawn towards the king's pavilion. The first was Richard Paddington, and was known the most folks there, but the others were strange to everybody. Beside young Partington walked a yeoman clad in blue, and behind came 3 others, 2 in Lincoln green and 1 in scarlet. The last yeoman carried 3 stout bows of the yew tree, 2 fanciful inlaid with silver and 1 with gold. While these 5 men came walking across the meadow, a messenger came running from the king's booth, and summoned Gilbert and Tempest and Hubert to go with him. And now the shouting quickly ceased, for all saw that something unwonted was toward, so the folk stood up in their places and leaned forward to see what was to ado.